Okay, we are now on day 2 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, 25 February 2022. Currently, it's a little after 2100 hours Eastern time. So I got what info I've been able to gather up since yesterday night. Current situation over in the Donbass, there's still heavy fighting around Mariupol. Mariupol has reportedly changed hands multiple times between separatist and Russian forces and the Ukrainians. It keeps going back and forth. This afternoon, U.S. time, so probably the evening over in Ukraine, Russian naval infantry made a landing to the west of Mariupol. I do not have an exact location on that. That's just, the reports are they landed to the west, so they're trying to cut off Mariupol from the west, is how that looks. Down in Crimea, the Ukrainian army broke and retreated to north of the Dnieper River. Currently, they're holding a defense at Kherson, going over this direction. Kherson is about 60 kilometers north of where the engagement area first began down here. The Ukrainian army is currently holding at Kherson. There is heavy fighting going on at a bridge right at Kherson. The Russian naval infantry that came up out of the Crimea is trying to cross there. If that happens, they then have a bridgehead that crosses the Dnieper River. It's still a long distance, though, from here to Kyiv. No word on any additional fighting around Odessa at this time. Moldova, there's still talk of diversionary attacks going on there. Now, up around Kharkov. The Russian armor assault out of Belgorod to Kharkov is being held back. Apparently, Ukrainian armor is kicking the fuck out of advancing Russian troops. Those old-ass T-64s, which I told you were very good tanks, they were outdated, but they still were useful, are apparently going toe-to-toe against the Russian armor, and they are holding them back. Keep in mind, though, they are being supported by artillery and also U.S. Javelin missiles. Now, because of being bogged down around Kharkov, the Russians are trying to push a flank up here around Sumy to the northwest, essentially coming in from the Kursk direction over here. Here's Kharkov, here's Sumy. They reportedly have surrounded Sumy, cutting off the Ukrainian troops and militia in that area. They are bypassing and trying to make a run towards Kyiv. Fighting around Kharkov, reportedly there is heavy shelling going on the city itself and the positions around it. Civilians are getting caught in the crossfire. Now, up around Kyiv. Early this morning, U.S. time, so it had been afternoon in Ukraine. Russian troops were reportedly on the outskirts and they were starting to enter Kyiv. Right before I started this video here, there are reports of Russian troops are in the outskirts. There is firefights going on inside Kyiv itself. The Ukrainian government is still trying to maintain that the Russian forces are still stopped at least 20 kilometers north, but they can't hide it anymore, that there's fighting going on around the city. Reports that Kyiv is being cut off, it is being surrounded. There was reports that paratroops were being dropped around Kyiv. Wow, I wonder if they watched my video last night. And paratroops are trying to push their way in. Ukrainian government, the Ministry of Defense is reporting they did shoot down one transport plane loaded with paratroops on the way towards Kyiv. Some other stuff here. Okay, in the north at Gostomel, where the Anatov airport is at, this is a larger base that the Ukrainian Air Force used to haul bulk transports out of. There's still heavy fighting going on in that area, so the thoughts are is that additional paratroopers were dropped last night after I did the video. So they're still trying to take that airport. Thoughts are that they're trying to secure the Anatov airport to use as a forward staging area for their aircraft so that they can hit Kyiv quicker, pull back, refuel, rearm, and go back right into the fight. The Ukrainian Army is reporting that yesterday, with the assault of the 20 helos of paratroops that were brought in that were essentially wiped out by Ukrainian paratroopers, they did succeed in shooting down 6 of the helicopters as they were coming in on the initial assault. Now, to the east of Kyiv, there is a civilian airport. I think they said about 10 to 15 clicks east. There's reportedly fighting going on around that airport. Thoughts are that these are also Russian paratroopers. I will mention this because everyone's talking about this. What is believed to be a Ukrainian pilot in an old MiG-29 has been shooting down aircraft around Kyiv. Reportedly has downed 6 aircraft in the first 24 hours of the fighting. Of those aircraft, reportedly 2 Sukhoi 35s, 2 Sukhoi 27s, or excuse me, 1 Sukhoi 27, 2 Sukhoi 25s, and 1 MiG-29. There is no confirmation yet of the Ghost of Kyiv, as he's being called in social media, if this is actually one single pilot, or if this is multiple aircraft, multiple pilots flying different MiG-29s in the area. But he's being used as a rallying cry for the defense of Kyiv. I have not heard if he got any kills in today or if he was shot down later on the first day. Do not know. Now, out of the north, remember, the Russian armored column came down out of Belarus with Belarusian army units through Chernobyl, pushing towards Kyiv. Reportedly, once they got past Chernobyl, they got down to around Ivankiv on the Teterev River. Once they got down there, they got stopped. A Ukrainian combat engineer volunteered, set charges on the bridge. He stayed behind to put in the final charges, because I guarantee it was not one guy putting in charges for the entire fucking bridge. But one engineer stayed behind to finish tying in the charges, getting them all set up. He got on the radio, he radioed his unit, told him he was not going to be able to make it out from there because he was under enemy fire. And he popped the fuse igniters and he went up with the bridge. The Ganitsky Bridge at Kyiv was taken out by a single combat engineer approximately 30 kilometers north of Kyiv, or 30 miles north of Kyiv. That held up one of the armored pushes. Now, because of Ukrainian armored units and infantry were engaging that pushed through Chernobyl, a second push came through a little bit to the east. Yep, right here. To the east of the main push, they tried doing a flanking maneuver around the east of Kyiv. They are currently flanking around Chernihiv, right here. This reportedly is also meeting heavy engagements with Ukrainian armor. So we got main battle going on here. Russian commander decided to try to flank going east through Chernihiv to swing down. The armor push, the flanking maneuver, is also being heavily engaged. I'm flipping back and forth because I have notes from the entire day going all the way through. Reportedly, yesterday evening, the Ukrainian military had handed out 1,000 weapons to civilians. By noon today in the U.S., reports were they handed out 10,000. And a couple hours ago here, reportedly they had handed out 18,000 weapons so far. Most of them appear to be AK-74s and AKMs. I do not know if they're handing out any other weapons beyond rifles and potentially a few pistols and submachine guns. But it looks like the bulk is AK-74s, AKMs. Now, the Ukrainian Army in the east here, and I don't think I'm going to be able to find it, did launch an attack in the Rostov region, somewhere over here, oh, down in here. The Ukrainian military reportedly launched a quote-unquote missile attack against the Milovovo air base, approximately 16 kilometers into Russia from the border. Now, because of the distance from the border, it's very likely that this was not missiles. It was probably rockets launched from MLRS. Exact type, I can't say for certain. But looking at the map here now, yeah, it's probably not BM-21s like I thought originally. It might be BM-14s, maybe something heavier because of the distance. Reportedly, oh yeah, the Ukrainian government this morning, their time, so last night, our time, reportedly told the citizens of Kyiv to start manufacturing Molotovs. I am still not seeing any barricades going up in Kyiv. I am still not even seeing a blackout of the city being done. This is incredibly goddamn stupid. You leave the fucking lights on, you do not perform a blackout, you make it easier for enemy aircraft and troops to orientate themselves so that they make sure to hit the correct target. Yes, I understand that they have GPS, but don't make it easy for them, please. GPS is not as accurate as people want it to be. I've seen no hedgehogs going in, there's no rock drops, no wire obstacles. I do not see any construction of sandbag emplacements going in or anything, but who knows, maybe they're doing that on the northern outskirts in the direction of the main Russian heavy armor push, and they're just not showing them so that the Russians do not get the intel, because it is known that the Russian intelligence services are monitoring social media and the news reports to get intel for their people. Like I said, lots of lessons learned on their part from our fuck-ups in Yugoslavia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Now, Fox News was reporting this morning that Russians were shelling the outskirts of Kyiv. Well, what they were not telling you is that the same time this was going on, the Ukrainian army had positioned MLRS units, BM-21s and others, inside civilian areas in the outskirts of Kyiv. So that shelling of those outskirts was more than likely Russians trying to take out those indirect fire assets. Counter battery fire. Midday today around noon, it was official. Putin had authorized peace talks to be conducted with the Ukraine, to be conducted in Minsk, the capital of Belarus, which happens to be one of the belligerents. They are supporting the main push out of the north. Reportedly, the demands in the peace talks are that Ukraine make it official that they will not join NATO ever, and that the Ukrainian army will demilitarize. Response from President Zelensky. He agreed that Ukraine should not join NATO, so he backed down from that request this morning, our time. But stated, and I fully back this one, Ukraine will not get rid of their military. They need it to defend their country, because without a military, they have no country. Not the exact words, but that's what I got from the article. Now, Ukraine also said that Minsk was inappropriate because they were belligerent. They requested the peace talks be held in Warsaw and Poland. Russia said that was inappropriate because that's a NATO country. So then at that point, Zelensky ordered the Ukrainian government to cut all communications with the Russians again. Now, NATO operations, I'll jump into this right away. This morning it was reported that last night, our time, here in the States, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland had all invoked NATO Article 5. Article 4, sorry, not Article 5, Article 4. Under Article 4, if a single member of NATO believes that they are an imminent threat from a foreign power, that a general meeting will be held with all NATO member countries to discuss the situation. The head of NATO agreed to this, and the meeting apparently was held this afternoon in the U.S. here. And invited to the meeting was Sweden and Finland, who are non-NATO members. And reportedly, they included in the conversation at some point President Zelensky in Ukraine. Now, at this time, apparently Finland is notified NATO that they are considering joining NATO, but have not made a decision on this. For those of you that do not know history, Finland has been conquered and invaded by Russia many times over the centuries. Officially, they're a neutral nation. Right now, they get equipment from both sides, NATO countries and Russia, and they also produce their own. No word on if Sweden is considering joining NATO or not. Now, after the Article 4 meeting was finished, NATO activated the Rapid Response Force to be deployed to the eastern borders of NATO. This Rapid Response Force is troops that are designated for each NATO member. They will be forward deployed to the eastern borders. We are looking at approximately 40,000 troops can be called up for rapid response operations. This does not include all of the troops that are still coming into Germany and Poland right now from the United States. Reportedly, though, that some of the 82nd going into Poland does fall under the RRF, but not the mech troops that are going into Germany right now. NATO has activated and pushed forward approximately 100 aircraft already into their eastern states here. These do include the F-35s, which were deployed to Europe today from the United States. NATO navies are also deploying 120 ships in the Baltic, down in the Med, and it sounds like they're trying to push some into the Black Sea also. These are ships from each of the NATO countries. So they are forward deploying. The stated operation right now for all of those NATO units is that if a NATO country is threatened or attacked, then they have people forward deployed to respond. Now, things that I'm seeing in U.S. propaganda today. Fox News was reporting this morning that there was 25 civilian dead, 102 wounded. This was before lunchtime in the U.S. And what was truly disgusting was that the Fox News people seemed to be upset that it was only 25 civilians had been reported dead. This afternoon it changed. Newsweek is reporting that there are 137 civilian KIAs. And I made the snide remark on my Patreon that, you know, if this was a U.S. operation, if we were invading the country, you know, there'd be thousands of civilian dead by now from collateral damage. You know, the Russians are slacking off. I mean, they're being too accurate with their artillery strikes and their airstrikes. You know, they're only killing enemy soldiers. I mean, they're not hitting apartment blocks and wedding parties. I mean, come on. You know, Obama's probably sitting over there telling them they're getting it wrong. You know, he should be able to wipe out 100 with a single drone. Reportedly, right now, which has not been confirmed, there is at least 800 Russian KIA from the operation so far over the last 48 hours. And several hundred POWs have been taken by the Ukrainian military on all the fronts. Russian troops are getting taken out. Russian aircraft are being shot down. Prisoners are being taken. Not all of them are being shot. I got a feeling that's going on down here in the Donbass. I got a feeling very few POWs are being taken down there. But in the rest of these areas, yeah, the Ukrainian army is taking prisoners. Now, Fox News was pushing a story which spread to the other networks this morning that Russia is covering up the number of their killed in action because they have proof. There are pictures of mobile super crematoria vans which can evaporate a body in seconds to hide the true numbers of their killed in action just by making the bodies disappear. Okay, fine. More propaganda still being pushed, covering up the Nazi iconography and Nazi ties with the Ukrainian government and military. they're still pushing that Zelensky is a Jew, and we're not supposed to forget it for any reason. It's being pounded down our throats nonstop. They're talking about Putin has a roundup and also kill lists, and the top of that list is Zelensky and his family. So apparently Adolf and Eva Braun and their kids are supposedly at the top of the kill list, being put out by Putin. Would they have a roundup list? Goddamn right they would. I mean, we fucking did when we went into Iraq. Remember the deck of cards? Same fucking thing, dumbasses. Once again, why is it okay when we do it, but another country does it? It's the most evil thing on the fucking planet. That still pisses me off. The fucking hypocrisy in our media and our government over this stuff. Now, they're also pushing that Putin reportedly is saying that he's going to be sending a unit of Chechens, who are barbarians, into Ukraine to start hunting down government people, journalists, and to cause chaos around Kyiv. Well, I can tell you this evening, with the bombardment going on around Kyiv, there is firefights going on inside Kyiv. It's thought to be Spetsnaz and also paratroopers. There are reports that Russian paratroopers, against international law, have been stripping uniforms from the Ukrainian dead, using the vehicles that are still usable after the ambushes, and they are getting through Ukrainian lines, going into Kyiv and causing chaos. So you're starting to see blue-on-blue firefights going on in Kyiv. Because of that, because the defenders in Kyiv do not know who each other are now. Expect that to get worse. There have been peace protests going on in Russia, primarily in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And Putin is having them arrested rather brutally. My question is, though, you had over the past few weeks here, international news agencies were going around those exact same areas asking the people what they thought about the pending invasion of Ukraine by Russian troops. The average Russian citizen was saying, what invasion? No one cares. Nothing's going to happen. It's not going to affect me any. But here we are. Now supposedly all these people are pissed off. They are now holding riotous protests inside Russia, and reportedly some of the demands include that Putin's supposed to step down. This thing has kind of a distinct smell to it, and I have a suspicion that a lot of this is being stoked by intel agencies out of certain NATO countries. So, because magically it's all being caught on camera. You know, it's almost like Al Jazeera just happening to be, you know, right in the area when an IED goes off next to an American convoy. So, same type of situation is what it seems like to me. And that is all the info I currently have. Oh, Poland's borders are still closed as of right now. Moldova, though, has opened their borders to Ukrainians, and they are building refugee centers. Some people are starting to head into Moldova, but most of them are heading towards Poland. There are reports of government officials and people with a lot of money in the country involved with the energy industry have somehow succeeded in making it into NATO countries and are claiming to be refugees now. I'm guessing their payments to the big guy assisted them to get across. Reportedly, American citizens showing up on the Polish border, if they had their passports, they are being allowed to cross from Ukraine into Poland. If you are Ukrainian, especially a male, you are being stopped at those Polish checkpoints on the border, being told you cannot enter. If you're a male, you're being told to turn around And the Ukrainian border troops are reminding people that if you're between the ages of 18 and 60, you are required to fight. You have been mobilized as long as you are able-bodied. So as long as you have one arm, two legs, and one eye, well, you can still stand behind a machine gun. And if you have one arm, one eye, no legs, and a wheelchair, well, guess what? They can put you behind a machine gun inside a trench somewhere and just set the locks on your wheelchair. You're good to go. They'll get another one-armed person to load the ammunition for you. If you're lucky, that other one-armed person will have one eye, but could potentially have no eyes and is doing everything by feel. There you go. That's what I got for tonight. We will see what develops over the next 24 hours. I and Kaz are kind of talking about maybe some type of live stream should get set up where we're just going to sit and, you know, we'll see who else might show up, or he might just do a live stream where he'll talk about the situation, because he's got some pretty good theories about how what's going on in Ukraine is going to be exploited here in the United States to crack down on us. And I really want to hear his thoughts on this stuff. I mean, even if I'm just there in the chat listening, I really want to hear what his theories are. If you want to hear about what's the economic impacts are of the current invasion, go check out John at the Prepared Mind channel. He did a 1-hour video on that this morning, Friday the 25th. You'll either find it at one of his channels on YouTube, you'll find it at his Patreon, and I know you'll find it over at BitChute because that's where I watched it. There's a lot of stuff going on economically because of this invasion that is going to screw all of us. Regardless of if you support the invasion or not, regardless of if U.S. troops go in or not. Now, for all my engineer brothers across Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.